So, I rarely make videos about my personal tastes, but I've been going back through the Toryumon archives on the Dragongate network, and in the mid-2001 stretch, I rewatched what was already my favorite Toryumon match of all time. But I think most fans don't have that much context about it, even if you have seen the match itself and know how important it is. If you have a network subscription, you can watch it in their Toryumon category, but if not, I'll tell you below where else you can find it. The event was at Korakuen Hall on August 14th, 2001. The main event was a 9-man 3-way elimination tag match for the UWA Trios Championships. Crazy Max, Shima, Suwa, and Big Fuji versus M2K, Masaki Mochizuki, Yasushi Kanda, and Darkness Dragon versus Magnum Tokyo, Ryo Saito, and Dragon Kid. The match is the first of its kind in Toryumon, and it set the standard for the Trianglegate division for the next 2 decades. The reason why I have such a personal connection to this match is because I've actually owned copies of it for over 20 years. In the early 2000s, the only real way I had access to Japanese wrestling was VHS tape trading, so I ordered the classic Pro-Res standards like 4 Pillars All Japan, the J-Crown Saga, and that infamous 5-star Michinoku Pro match with Kaientai Deluxe. A colleague recommended that I fill up the rest of my tape orders with as much Toryumon as the tape trader had, which wasn't much. I was already familiar with Ultimo Dragon because of WCW, and I knew Toryumon was his promotion, but I kept hearing names like Magnum Tokyo and especially Shima. The first thing I ordered was the classic Crazy Max compilation and the inaugural Young Dragons Cup. But the tape trader's catalog managed to stay very current, because by the time I got to the early 2000s, I'm pretty sure I ordered a tape with this match right after it happened. And while I haven't owned a VCR in probably over 15 years now, I eventually managed to track down a digital copy in crystal clear 240p resolution. So I was really happy to see it resurface on the network in HD. But now understanding all the context of the feuds and storylines, it made the match even better over 20 years later. Because aside from being one of the most memorable spot fests I've ever seen, it's absolutely packed with storylines, which at the time I had zero information about. When I first saw this match, I didn't even know who everyone was yet. The first thing I'll tell you about this match is that classic Toryumon Japan had a triple ace situation. The main 3 names carrying the company were Ultimo Dragon's top Toryumon Mexico trainees, Shima and Magnum Tokyo, and Masaki Mochizuki, who Ultimo had worked with in WAR. Each of them are team leaders in this match, so it was a big deal to have all 3 clash at once. But interestingly, none of those 3 ever held Toryumon's main singles belt, the NWA World Welterweight Championship. That's because singles champions were never really the point of early Toryumon. Instead, they put the belt on workhorses like Dragon Kid and Susumu because the aces never needed it. They were already incredibly over without it, and their focus was more on generational rivalries and big feuds, and basically just being really popular and handsome. That happens a lot in Lucha Libre. Mochi and Magnum both got runs with the British Commonwealth belt, which I'll address later, but Shima never actually won a singles belt in Toryumon at all until they introduced the short-lived Ultimo Dragon Gym Championship in the company's final year, before Ultimo left and they rebranded as Dragongate. After that, they ditched his vanity belt and created the Open the Dream Gate. Another piece of historical context you should know is that Crazy Max formed well before Toryumon Japan was even a thing. They started in Toryumon Mexico and were the first ever heel unit in a long line of Dragon System heel units. Crazy Max also lasted through Toryumon's entire run and didn't disband until the first year of Dragongate, and the 3 in this match were the original core lineup of Shima, Suwa, and Don Fuji, at the time called Big Fuji. In the early 2000s, the only reason Crazy Max turned face-ish, though more like tweener, was because M2K had formed and began out-healing them. Instead of cheating to win, M2K's whole thing was ruining matches and causing double countouts. To them, that was a victory. And from 2000 to 2002, various lineups of Crazy Max and M2K clashed in dozens of matches. The original lineup of M2K, as the name implies, was Masaki Mochizuki, Susumu Mochizuki, and Yasushi Kanda. They added more members over the years and through multiple incarnations, but in this particular match, the lineup was Mochi, Kanda, and Darkness Dragon, who was previously known as the vampire gimmick Makoto, and later renamed Kness. But after years of rivalries between the 3 aces, a third faction sprung up shortly before this match, though they were unofficial at first. Top babyface Magnum Tokyo recruited Ryo Saito and Dragon Kid into a Seikigun, or home roster army. This lineup would be the prototype for Do Fixer, which formed the next year and stayed together for multiple years. Generational rivalries have always been a very big deal in this company, either with 2 wrestlers who debuted around the same time, or whose characters were essentially created to feud with each other. This match brought together 2 of those rivalries. While Mochizuki had a few years under his belt already, Shima and Magnum Tokyo were contemporaries who debuted at the same time in Mexico, and feuded on and off until Magnum's retirement. While they only ever had a handful of singles matches, they were on opposing sides over 200 times in various unit matches over the years. A few years later, even their respective proteges, Shingo Takagi and BB Hulk, began a generational rivalry of their own, which also lasted many years. The other generational rivalry that came into play here was Dragon Kid vs. Darkness Dragon, which was deeply personal, involved title belts and unmaskings, and also lasted for multiple years, even after Darkness Dragon's name change. Their careers were so intertwined that Dragon Kid was one of Kness's opponents in his retirement match in 2022. But even more was going on between other members of each team. Big Fuji and Ryo Saito had previously feuded and tagged before. Saito's debut was under a cyclist gimmick, and Fuji stole his bike. They feuded over custody of it, and later reconciled and briefly formed the Bicycle Brothers tag team. This match features a callback spot to that team. Fuji had also recently gotten involved in Saito's budding feud with Genki Horiguchi, who was in the midst of a heel turn, and Fuji took Saito's side. Also on the Crazy Max end of things, Suwa had begun losing faith in the unit, and Shima, so he really needed this victory. Kanda was the only one who didn't have an individual story coming into it, but this match was still important for him, because it kicked off a long feud with Fuji. Unfortunately, Kanda was injured and had to retire a few months later, spending the next few years as a referee. But when he came out of retirement and returned to the ring in 2006, his feud with Fuji picked up again. Finally, there were multiple title belts that were involved in the rivalries going into this. When the Mexican Lucha Libre promotion UWA closed its doors, several Japanese promotions picked up their old title belts. The UWA World Trios belts were introduced to Toryumon a few months before this match in May 2001, and had so far only been traded between Crazy Max and M2K. But Crazy Max vacated the belts after their Kobe World defense due to interference from Dick Togo. But they kept carrying the belts anyway until a decision match between them and M2K was held. M2K won, briefly, and Crazy Max won them back 11 days later, coming into this big title defense as somewhat disgraced champions. Also at Kobe World 2001, Masaki Mochizuki and Magnum Tokyo had just main evented for the British Commonwealth Junior Heavyweight title, and Magnum Tokyo was champion going into this match after a major victory. Meanwhile, M2K original Susumu Mochizuki, later known as Susumu Yokosuka, was not in this match, as he defended the NWA World Welterweight title against Ricky Marvin earlier in the night on the same card. Now, I'm not going to do a play-by-play here. Please watch the match yourself, you won't regret it. But it's not just absolutely loaded with context, it also has some extremely innovative spots. It's also one of the matches in this company that you can easily point to that popularized the phrase multi-man sprint. It's chaotic, it's really fun, and the action is literally non-stop. It's also an elimination match with 2 falls, and the order of elimination is very interesting, especially once you know the context of the units and the title belts going into it. So again, no spoilers, just watch the match after you've seen this video. But hold off another minute because I'm not quite done yet. The aftermath was also very important. Following the end of this match, the units continued fighting until Ultimo Dragon came to the ring. Ultimo hadn't wrestled for a few years by this point due to an arm injury and a botched surgery to fix it, and he wouldn't return for another year, mostly in tag matches. He decided that the best way to solve their differences was the first ever survival cage match, which became a major staple of Dragongate, usually appearing at May's Dead or Alive event. And as Toryumon became a unit-based promotion, this was also the catalyst for Trios belts as the symbol of unit supremacy. That still holds true with modern Dragon Gates Open the Triangle Gate Championship. And on top of all that, the match became the template of unit rivalry matches in Dragon Gate for years, including the all-important unit disbands matches. On the last Kodokan Hall show of 2024, where longtime comedy wrestler Stalker Ichikawa retired, the semi-main event of that card was another 9-man trios match called This is Dragon Gate. So the format is now used to show off what the roster can do, even in the modern age of the company. So many things would have never happened without this match, so please do yourself a favor and check it out, because as many similar matches have come and gone since, some even improving on the formula, this match truly was the first of its kind. Thanks for watching.